So Twitter, who uses Twitter in the room? Put your hands up. Who uses it personally? Professionally? There we go, so we're all using Twitter. So we expect to see lots of tweets during the session. Okay, we're going to move straight on through. So we have three amazingly beautiful presenters here this afternoon. And we're going to start with Melissa from Twitter. We're then going to head through to Ali from Seattle CVB, and then Leslie McClellan from Tourism Currents. It's going to be a good session, guys. Over to you.
Thank you.
Big round of applause.
Hi, everyone. I'm Melissa Barnes. I lead agency and brand advocacy at Twitter. The purpose of my role, my team, is to help businesses use the platform in a way that has impact. So we can get people on Twitter and they can be saying, you know, I had coffee, but that doesn't really do anything for them. So I spend a lot of time talking to different brands and companies and helping them think through what's the right way to use Twitter. Really quickly, I'm going to say we're also probably amazingly smart, just for everyone in the in the room to know.
I thought that went
make that
without saying.
Yeah, no. But I find it's often helpful before we talk about the business opportunity to first talk about the user experience on Twitter, right? So quickly, does anyone know who this is, this gentleman? I'll give somebody a free iPad if you can name the right name. Okay, good. You weren't supposed to know. I didn't bring an iPad. This is Stuart Brand. He's the editor of the Whole Earth Catalog, or was the editor of the Whole Earth Catalog. And he's famous for being kind of a conspiracy theorist. He started a campaign in the 60s asking why we hadn't seen a photograph of the whole Earth yet, and started giving out all these buttons to people around San Francisco and other cities. Up to that point, all we'd seen was a photo that looked like this. So Stuart made the case that until we see a picture of the entire Earth, how do we know that it's round? How do we know anything that we've been told is true? And so his campaign took off, and the next time NASA went up to the moon, they took a picture. And this is the photo that they took. It's one of the most famous photos in the world. It's called the Blue Marble. It's the most reproduced image in the world. And what they found was that it had an interesting socializing effect. Because when people saw the world, all of a sudden they realized that it's actually much smaller than you would imagine, that it's easier to connect to people than you would think, because it's really not that far apart, and this is the world lit up at night, and you can see some of those connections that are happening. And so when we think about how that might apply to Twitter, that's kind of what we're seeing happen today. Literally, the world is in your pocket if you've downloaded the mobile app, which you all should have. But this idea of it brings you closer to people, not necessarily people you know, but people who are talking about the things that you are most interested in. And that's a really important thing to consider, right? And I think that's probably the key opportunity for brands, because where once you saw sort of these boundaries, now we see people connect at moments all over the world in different time zones. And so this is an illustration of the tweets going out when England played France in the Euro Cup. And so the red lines are England, the blue lines are France, and you know, in one part of the world it's 4 p.m. and in another part of the world it's 4 a.m. and everyone's talking about this moment in time, right? That's their connection. But what's really intriguing about Twitter is it brings you closer to even that story. So you're interested in football or soccer, or American football, depending on how you say it, where you sit. And Wayne Rooney is one of the most famous footballers in the world, and to read his tweets and what he's saying as a person is really compelling. And we find that getting closer to those people is interesting. Most people don't get access to Wayne Rooney or Lady Gaga or President Obama. So remember that, this idea of it brings you closer. And depending on the person that you're trying to get closer to, you can look at them based on their interests. And so, you know, it might be something related to family. It might be related to the movies. It might be related to the next vacation that they want to take. And so when we look at our job at Twitter, our job is to bring people closer to the stories that are most interesting to them. And when we look at the travel category, we see that there's a lot of interest in travel. an average of 800,000 travel-related mentions on Twitter each day. And I think more importantly, when you look at the business opportunity, we over-index in people who are talking about it and the fact that they take action from that. So 16.8 million people on Twitter took a trip in the last 12 months. And that's a huge opportunity. And so want to talk a little bit then about how you translate that to what you're trying to do as marketers. And it's something that we've put a lot of thought toward. We call it the canvas. And you think about sort of traditional marketing, right? And it's all been about putting your message next to interesting content and hoping that people will see you and pay attention and look over from that show that they were watching or that article that they were reading. So, you know, we interrupt this broadcast to bring you a message. Or even more recently, you know, we'll flash you with bright and shiny, colorful things, and please, dear God, look at us. And we think actually on Twitter that if you can look at the conversations that are happening, you can find ways to insert yourself in a way that makes a lot of sense. It's that idea of if you go to a cocktail party and only talk about yourself, you probably won't get invited back. But if you go to a cocktail party and understand what people are talking about and find ways to sort of bring your own side of things to the conversation and are interesting, funny, informative, you're a great guest, and you'll probably get invited back. And that's kind of how we think about Twitter and that opportunity. So think of it as the conversation is the canvas, right? And with that, you can do things like tell incredible stories. We know that you can look at different events that are coming and predict that people are going to talk about it. So when the Olympics were happening, we knew that for 2 weeks this summer, the Olympics were going to be showing up all over the place. And you'd be surprised at the way that different brands have sort of predicted these cultural events and found a way in. So go back to that illustration of the Euro Cup. And England beat France in this game, but the next game, they played Italy. And they lost in penalties. And the thing about England is they always lose in penalties. So nobody should be surprised, but everybody was heartbroken. Visit England was really clever. And the next day, tweeted out, England loses on penalties. For more on our cultures and traditions, go to visitengland.com. This has been retweeted almost 10,000 times. 1,500 people favorited it. And it was such a phenomenon because it was so clever and right on that we saw earned media pick up, right? They got credit from the traditional press saying, look at how clever they are. They got a lot more followers. People went to their website. It was a win. So just looking for those opportunities. You know, Wisconsin. Anybody from Wisconsin who's been to Wisconsin, you have an appreciation for the Packers. So this is the infamous moment recently. And you know, nobody predicted this happening, but Visit Wisconsin did some smart things, or Travel Wisconsin, excuse me, and sort of using tickets as a way to sort of get people, to give them something, right? It's right on equity with what Wisconsin is about. It's a favorite team, and offering that to people, hashtagging Packers Nation, that made a lot of sense for their brand, and it gave people something, people who are following them, something that made a lot of sense. So that also works really well on Twitter. And there's the entry, right? But think about also Lufthansa. You know, they're looking for what is their brand about, and their company is about taking people to interesting places. So when the running of the bulls are happening, well, they're not based in Spain, showing photos of that experience and reminding people that this is happening, that Lufthansa will take you there to these incredible events. On travel, you have so many great, rich stories that you can tell. So photographs, videos, we know that if you include those in your tweets, there's a much higher engagement there. You know, you get to romance the places and the destinations that you represent. And so thinking about how you can tell that story in a really rich way is something we push people to do. You know, people follow comedians on Twitter because they might want to laugh in the middle of the day. You know, you follow travel destinations, and that's a way to sort of get out of your office for a minute while you read those 140 characters. Click on that link. Look at it that way. And that idea of telling the richer story. So Airbnb, another example of sort of showing people where they could go. So, and just some of the nuances of what they offer. So here they're talking about the Hobbit House of Montana, which sounds really weird. And when you look at the pictures, you find it is really weird. But you know, this is a place that you can stay because of Airbnb. LA Chamber of Commerce, looking like Arrowhead, and I don't want to get ahead of you. I know. We gave you the spotlight because it's such a great story. I don't want to tell your story, but it's a really good one because Twitter is not, it's free. We have products. You can, and they certainly amplify and accelerate anything that you're communicating. But when you first start on it, it's free. You continue on a brand and it doesn't cost you anything. And so that as a marketing tool, most of you probably have limited budgets. What we see happen time over time is people start, they build up a following, they start to develop a content system, and then they start to pay for ads because the ads are really effective in finding the right people and highlighting the right messages at those key milestone moments. But first start on it and figure out what makes sense for your brand. That's what we tell everyone. That's all I'm going to say about you. And to that point of sort of driving actions, right? You want people to reserve. You want people to buy tickets. You want people to tell their friends about that experience. Only NSF, local Twitter handle, they tweet out at lunchtime different spots where you can go and have lunch. And so they'll, you know, put food porn in front of you, again, the photographs and things like that. And it's very smart. Brands like Subway do this too. When it's time to eat, they remind people that they're there when people are making those decisions. So think about not only the day that you're saying something or going to tweet out something, but also like what time of day is that going out? And depending on the people you're talking to, what are they going to be doing at that moment in time? There's a reporter for the New York Times who's a columnist, and he knows that when he tweets about his Sunday column, if the weather is nice in New York City, it's better to wait till the end of the day in Sunday to tweet because people are going to be outside of that moment in time. So think about things like that when you're thinking about your content. The Travelocity Gnome is very well known, and there's what we see at Twitter is that, you know, again, back to that point about it's an amplifier, an accelerator, a connector. We don't believe in Twitter-only programming. The best marketers are people who are thinking about that bigger story and connecting it across many channels because Twitter can help move that. And so the Twitter TV experience is really interesting to see. We're seeing a lot of marketers come to us and their TV buys are tied to their Twitter buys, and they're using things like hashtags in TV commercials to connect campaigns. And so this is the latest snippet of the Travelocity campaign.
Do make it entertaining. I have a very short attention span. Oh, a kitty. Where was I? Right. Shoot me your InterTube video. I'll be here, waiting. Very still.
So their latest campaign is the Great Gnome Nabbing, and they're playing that out on Twitter. And so tweeting out where the gnome might be in different cities, and in this case, they're telling people to go to the Flatiron building in New York, and they might get something. Again, it's almost a game that's happening on Twitter. We've seen interesting activations where people are doing choose your own adventure and using hashtags to help people decide. But there's all kinds of clever ways that you can remind people about what your campaign is about and use Twitter to support that in different ways, whether you're sending them on a fun search, you're giving them information, or you're just lightening their day in an interesting way. And then finally, I think what you've probably heard about most in the travel category is that Twitter can be an effective customer service tool, right? You know, and that's a really compelling thing to show that you care about your customers. And there's different ways that you can do that. So I can certainly show you, you know, how some different airlines have, you know, responded back to people. More often than not, you see people tweeting when they're having an issue, right? And they're expecting a response. If somebody tweets at a brand that is on Twitter, 80% of them expect a response that day. 30% of them expect a response within 30 minutes. So we're seeing companies start to set themselves up to manage that. And we met with one airline, and we're asking them why they were on Twitter. And they showed us this huge room full of people talking to people on the phone. And it's one-on-one conversations, interactions. And they said, you know, when you do it like this, it's defensive, right? Defensive marketing, because you're responding to people who are calling you. But on Twitter, when you respond, it's public. And then it makes it proactive because those people have followers more often than not. When someone has a positive engagement with a brand, they reward them for it. They say, you were amazing. Thank you, American Airlines. Thank you, JetBlue. And that goes to their followers. So it takes something that was one-on-one defensive and potentially has an exponential effect. Also, people sort of looking for people who are tweeting at them and saying, followers, community, can you help this person? So just being creative in how you connect people. And then finally, Visit Sweden actually did this first, and now Vermont has started this campaign where, people go someplace and everyone has sort of a different experience, so how do you capture that? So something that Vermont is doing is they're every week having somebody else take over their Twitter feed, and they get to tell a different story, and depending on who you are, different things are interesting to you. And that's a way to show all the shades of Vermont. So again, there's a lot of room for creativity here. And we like to say that there are best practices out there, but we are so new. Twitter's been around for 6 years. We've had products for 2 years. We expect people to continue to innovate and be creative, and I think there's the sky's the limit. So with that, I'll hand it off to my next panelist.
Does Twitter still matter? And for the record, I did not come up with this title for the presentation. It could have gone a little sideways if I had a different response to this question. But this was why we were asked, I'm Allie Daniels from Seattle CVB. It is why we were asked to present here today is we use Twitter in kind of a fun way, which I'll get into. And I noticed a lot of hands that people have Twitter accounts. How many have tweeted about San Francisco since you've been here? Can I see a show of hands? Not too bad. Us in Seattle put a lot of stock in the fact that when people are in a location, they talk about it. So I'll walk you through our case study. And just to make sure Jake knows I'm doing my job, I'll be talking about our campaign a little bit, objectives, budget. We'll talk about Clout and our partnership with them and the evolution of that. Success measurement, was this successful on a number of different levels? And then some key learnings, and will we do it again, which I think is the big question. Campaign summary. Seattle, this is the first time Seattle has ever had a leisure campaign. We just passed the tourism improvement area up there, which is a whole other conference, a whole other day. But basically we have 56 hotels paying into a leisure tourism fund that has to focus on overnight visitors during off-peak. So it's a big challenge. I now have 56 more bosses, which makes it very long days. But we had to target specific audiences for efficiency and effectiveness, creative that drives action. Really, we want those people to spend the night in Seattle. That was our biggest goal. Key markets with high impact media. In Seattle, we call it Montana-ing because we have been blessed with Montana's advertising for the last 3 years, I believe. And you can't turn a corner without seeing a beautiful image of Montana. And we want to maintain a consistent presence. So we looked at what Seattle has to offer during off-peak. Everyone knows Seattle is a beautiful place to visit during the summer, but people aren't as aware of the things that you can do inside while you're in Seattle. And our off-peak is about October through April. So we put our key message together, which was Seattle is a unique art, music, culinary destination with a rich tapestry of experiences waiting for you this weekend. We had Gauguin, which was the only stop in the US, Taste Washington, which is a big wine festival that happens in March. James Beard Award winners, Tom Douglas on the far end was just awarded James Beard Restaurateur of the Year, so we like to promote him and his tummy a little bit. Nirvana at EMP, Pike Place Market, all of those attractions that Seattle has. Who wants to come and see those things and experience them? So we created the Sophisticated Traveler. 35 and up, well-educated, has some money to spend for a weekend trip. When they get to a place, they're active, they go out, but they are also active online. We want people that are tweeting, that are on Facebook, that use Instagram, that use Pinterest. And we wanted about a 2-hour-ish drive or fly time, makes it really accessible for a weekend trip. Which for us, Vancouver, Portland, and San Francisco, high impact media available, about 2 hours-ish to get there, and we could stay there for a while. So we created an invitation to these consumers. What will you do with year 2? Come spend 2 days in Seattle. and wanted to put together these itineraries for individuals so they could get the most of their 2 days. We started with big, bold images with the unique claims that Seattle has. If you can't read, tiny little print. You couldn't miss it in San Francisco. In Q1, we were all over Montgomery Street Station. But it says 84 master musicians, 47 incredible dancers, 1 unforgettable trip, always ending it with Seattle. 500 musical instruments, 36 opera performances, 1 city with serious range. All these around arts, culture, food, wine, and music. 35 Zagat Celebrity Chef restaurants. You guys get the hint. We don't have to go through all of them. But we took over these high impact areas, SkyTrain platforms in Vancouver, transit and billboard in Portland, again, some transit shelters, everyone, or all of the messaging driving people to 2daysinseattle.com. We'll come back to the site in a minute, but for the most part, we took a Google map, pre-populated it with green dots, so everything that a consumer would need when they were in our city. Where are the hotels, where are the restaurants, where are the attractions, and they're the little green dots that you can see. I definitely invite you to visit 2daysinseattle.com if you haven't yet. But we'll come back to what the orange dots and the Pinterest styling looks like. But you'll see there is a hotel booking widget right under the map. Obviously, our hoteliers that are funding this want to make sure that as soon as someone has some interest in Seattle, it's an easy 1-2 step to book their hotel. We felt pretty good about our campaign. It was a solid campaign, but we wanted to make it great. We wanted that X factor. So we worked with our agency to come up with something different, and that's when Klout came in. Is everyone familiar with Klout? Hands? Just Cliff Notes version, they, somewhat controversially, report on social media influence. So they look at all the channels that you use social media and rank you as far as how influential you are. Obama, maybe not this week, but usually about an 86. It's on a scale of 1 to 100. Kim Kardashian usually comes in at about a 92. So if that tells you anything about our culture, we'll move along. But what we were looking for is someone about a Jessica Simpson, someone that's above 50, that has at least 50 Klout, not age, sorry, about 50 and up for your Klout score, over 1,000 followers that are influential in these areas that we're promoting, so arts, culture, food, wine, and music. And if they know a little bit about travel, we like that too. We created a Klout perk, which Klout typically works with brands like laundry detergents, car companies, and offers an award for people, or a perk for people that are influential in those areas. Maybe a mother of 5 that has laundry up to her ears would get to try a new laundry detergent in hopes that she would be tweeting to her friends about this wonderful product. We were one of the first destinations to use them, which was great for us because we got to try out a lot of fun things. But basically, they put this perk out to influencers in the markets that we were in. So Portland, Vancouver, San Francisco, 10 influencers in each, and offered them a perk. Come spend 2 days in Seattle on us. We'll pay for you to get here. We'll put you up in one of our hotels. We'll give you a $500 Visa gift card. The only thing we ask in return is if you enjoy yourself, please use the hashtag, please tweet about it and use the hashtag 2daysinseattle. We found influencers like Rick Backus. He's kind of our poster child. I think right now his Klout score is up to about a 70, but he had 65,000 followers on his Twitter account. He was influential in wine, and some of you may know Ben. Bachelor Ben actually showed up in our influencer stream because he owns a winery. He had a high Klout score. This was right as his Bachelor Ben season was finishing up. And he actually did take us up on the offer, which I think is kind of funny. So we invited these people in February. If you've been to Seattle in February, you would think that we were crazy. But we had a lot of faith in our city and a lot of faith in the fact that if you invite someone as your guest, hopefully they'll be pretty polite. So I definitely gave up every weekend of February watching the Twitter stream of these influencers that were in town in hopes that they had a great time. And out of the 30, actually 29 had a spectacular visit. You might not see the other one show up. But tweet they did. You know, we asking about if you tweeted about the destination. We were hopeful, and it resulted in 19,000 tweets and retweets from our 30 influencers, which was incredible. So I'd like to take you through those 19,000 right now. Just kidding. end of the day. I know we're the two people keeping you from happy hour, so we'll keep this quick. But they tweeted about the things that we wanted them to, actually, about their hotel. My hotel partners are quite happy about that. About the food they were eating. People love to take pictures of their food, which is great for this contest. But talking about what they had, where they went, Pike Place Market luckily showed up in there. We took all of those tweets, or the relevant ones, and made them orange dots on our website. So not only do you know that you can't miss the crumpet shop at Pike Place Market, don't you dare miss the lemon curd that Jo Boston tried when she was there. They posted pictures, so we put them as a Pinterest style underneath the map. So as people click on the tweets, you can see what these people experienced. People trust people like them much more than they trust individuals like me that get paid to promote a location. So we took advantage of that. People like to connect with people, and here we are showing them exactly how they experienced their trip through our city. You can sort by curator, so you can see that Jo Boston, who I just referenced, had 4 lunches one day. My goodness, she ate her way through our city, but she has very good taste in food. So you can follow them through, but also add those to your itinerary, and you can either email those to a friend, you can print them out, you can keep them on your phone, so that when you do get to the city, you have those at your fingertips. So what does that mean? Was this successful? 19,000 tweets sounds pretty great. What we calculated was that that equaled an additional 39.1 million impressions for our campaign in the big orange box. So for our full campaign, we had about 199 million. So this was a nice little addition to that campaign. We had over 72,000 unique visitors to the site during Q1 that spent over 4 minutes on the site. So for destinations, I think you can cheer along with me. That was huge. That was very big for us, that people were spending a lot of time and digging into that content. I put the budget was 30,000-ish. That was the travel costs and the Visa gift cards for these individuals. There was a nominal clout partnership fee as well. But over 19,000 tweets, it's incredible. Key learnings from this, oh, in addition to that, success for our hoteliers, of course, because they don't know what impressions mean. Our occupancy was up about 7% during Q1, which was huge for them, a number that they can relate to. We used Radian6 to look at the conversations about Seattle before and after the campaign. Before, you know, we saw Seattle and then Space Needle, Seattle and coffee, Seattle and rain. After the campaign, Seattle and art, Seattle and food, a lot of Seattle and foods, Seattle and music, and all the things that our campaign really pushed forward. We managed the visitor center at Pike Place Market and in our convention center, and we had visitors from San Francisco coming up to our concierge saying, "We saw the 2 days campaign. That's why we're here." And for as long as I've been in advertising, no one has ever admitted that ads make you do anything, so that was our own little victory there. Influencer timing. We had 30 influencers come over 3 weekends. We saw peaks in conversations in cyberspace. So we have done this since. We brought influencers in during the summer, and we'll be bringing them in during the winter as well. And we're spreading it out to spread out that conversation a little bit. Welcome packages. Basically, we had a letter waiting for them along with their gift card. We've started to include things that we want people to try out. So is it a tour? Is it a gentle nudge to go see King Tut at the Pacific Science Center? Just making sure that we're getting people to all corners of our city. Asset utilization, the first time through, getting close, the first time through, we didn't have them sign anything about saying that we could use their photos. So ideally, we would love to use these amazing photos, all of this content that these people are generating in potential ad campaigns, because Instagram, if you were in that session, you can do beautiful things with Instagram. And future potential, yes, absolutely. We brought 18 in during the summer. We can't spend a lot of money during the summer because, again, we have to focus on off-peak. We did online, and we brought in 18 influencers. They generated almost as much content as the 30 from Q1. So again, creating all of these new and exciting expert opinions from people that people trust versus the paid professionals. So future potential is yes. And that's it. Right on time, too. Yeah.
Okay, I'm last one of the day. Are you guys getting ready to get out of here, eh? I bet. I'm Leslie McClellan, and for the last 21 years, I was the marketing person for Lake Arrowhead, California, and I left 6 months ago and joined Tourism Currents. But my topic today is budget. What budget? How a DMO with $0, that would be me, $0, used Twitter to market a destination with tangible results. How many of you have ever won the lottery? Raise your hand. Yeah, just like me, I never have either. But I tell you, when I started using social media, I thought I had won the lottery, and primarily with Twitter. I think Twitter is an absolute true gift because you can reach people you would never imagine you could reach when you do Twitter, correctly. So this is Lake Arrowhead, Southern California. We're 90 miles east of Los Angeles. We're a mile high in the mountains, so we get all 4 seasons. And we are a tourist destination in Southern California, but my competition would be Newport Beach, Disneyland, Palm Springs, the beaches, and we're an unincorporated area. We're not a city. So that means all of our tax dollars, all of our bed tax, gets shipped right down to the county, and the county would then give me a grant back to do the destination marketing. Now, we'd give them about $800,000, and my marketing budget was $130,000. And that sounds like a lot, but it isn't, because that covered the rent of the visitor center, all the collateral, everything we had to do. I was a marketing department of 1, thank you very much, and when it was all said and done, I had maybe, on a good year, $15,000 to advertise with. And so you all know, you can do a whopper of an advertising program with $15,000, as in not. So anyway, the one thing Lake Arrowhead is known for is great events, though. So there's a little background on Lake Arrowhead. So in the fall of 2008, the economy was tanking. We were losing businesses that were members of the chamber because they could not, they're all mom and pops, they could not afford $230 to be chamber members. But really the worst thing was that we lost every single sponsor for every last one of our events. All of that money dried up. So of my little $15,000, we had to decide, did we want to put it into a big whopping advertising program, or did we want to put it into the events to keep having the events so people would come up and visit? And that's what we did. And I sat before the board of directors and said, oh, I think we can do this via social media. Of course, I had no profiles. I'd done nothing with social media, but oh yeah, we can do this. So the board of directors said, okay, you give it a shot. And really, truly, for 6 months, because there was nobody teaching this stuff then in 2008, I would go to work and come home and all night long just research. And for 6 months, never made a post, got the profiles all set up, but I was really hesitant to get into it until I knew what I was really doing. And so, don't ever do it like this. I mean, that was the stupidest thing you could have done. But I decided that our first tweets would be at our one big high-profile event, which is the Lake Arrowhead Film Festival, and you can see some of our stars. Yeah, they all have second homes up in Lake Arrowhead. But, who was going to tweet about it? So I got three or four of my friends and said, get a Twitter account, and we're going to tweet live from this event, and let's just see what happens. And so we did that. I have good friends, let me tell you. And we didn't bring up anybody new, we didn't increase the attendance for the event, but what was so cool is that via Twitter, that event lived on for 3 weeks after it was over. And all of us know that you promote, have your event, and you're lucky if you get one article in the newspaper when it's all said and done. So we deemed this a raving success, and we were so happy about it. So then in June, we have an antique and classic wooden boat show. And I thought, I wonder if I tweet out about that and use a hashtag and maybe say hashtag antique classic wooden boat, antique boats, wooden boats. And that thing I had actually marketed for 20 years. And it was a great little regional event. And the minute I put a hashtag in front of hashtag wooden boat, got 2 calls from the East Coast, and all of a sudden our little regional event got national publicity, all because of Twitter. It was really amazing, and let me tell you, the board of directors just loved everything I was doing. They thought that was fabulous. So then we have a summer concert series, and that runs from May through Labor Day every year, and it's every Friday and Saturday night. It had a 6-year history already, but you know, it's not a big band thing. We knew our market of families, and in 2009, we knew they were looking for free things to do, and it just happened that our summer concert series was free. So I thought, let's see what we can do here, and we actually crowdsourced before there was a crowdsourcing word, or at least a crowdsourcing word that I knew. I went to the MC of the event and said, hey, would you ask everybody in the audience if they're on Twitter, and if they are, would you ask them to tweet about the concert while they're here and use the hashtag Lake Arrowhead? And I'll never forget this poor MC. He looked at me and he said, Twitter, tweet, hash, what are you talking about? And so I said, I'll write you a script, and if you'll just read it for a few weeks, let's see what happens. And in the very beginning, he would say, how many of you are on Twitter in the audience? And we have like, I don't know, 1,500 people maybe that come on Friday and Saturday nights. Not maybe a half dozen people raised their hands. You know, nobody was really doing it, but I think, at least for Southern California, the summer of 2009 is when Twitter really started to catch on, because every week more and more people were raising their hands that they were on Twitter, and they were tweeting out about our concert series. And 4th of July came around. Now, realize we started this in the middle of May. 4th of July came around, and by then I'd figured out Hootsuite and TweetDeck and all this. I thought it was pretty cool. I was able to sit back and watch thousands, literally thousands of tweets go by for the 4th of July weekend. And people were all hashtagging Lake Arrowhead. It was absolutely incredible. We were, and the merchants were happy, and that was really who I had to answer to, merchants and hoteliers. And everybody was really happy about what was going on. And then Jake asked me if I would show a few of the tweets that we did, because it's not rocket science. It's just being social. You're having a conversation on Twitter. So these are, I'm sorry, you might not be able to see that, but these are the tweets that I put up. This is just random, random from the summer. And, you know, Lake Arrowhead, Wednesday weekend update. That was something I always posted on our website on Wednesdays so people would know what was happening on the weekend. The Wednesday weekend update's posted. You can see I used a bit.ly link. Then you can see I used the next one, come up enjoy our wildlife at Lake Arrowhead. I used a Hootsuite link. I didn't know what I was supposed to be doing. You can see I used TinyURL too. I was experimenting with everything. Now we just use Hootsuite. But I was talking about what would drive people to come up to the area. The concerts, wildlife, we're in the mountains. You can take that however you want to take it. Again, the concerts, the weather, and then I talked about lodging. It was nothing extra special, but it was engaging people, and people were retweeting, talking about us, and our village was absolutely packed on the weekends. Twice we had to close it down because we had too many people for these concerts that are no name, but just family-oriented, lots of fun. And you know, to us it was really something. So fall came around, and I knew I was going to hear from the county what our bed tax was projected to be for the year. And I really started to sweat it because my credibility was on the line. I'd kind of put our community on the line saying, could we do this? And in November of 2009, and I have a slide that I'll show you the actual numbers in a few minutes, we heard from the county, and not only had we maintained our bed tax, but we were getting just slightly more than we had gotten the year before when we had actually done paid advertising regionally and in magazines and print. And social media, primarily Twitter, carried us through the year. And thank heavens, I'm really happy that that happened. And so then I did what any self-respecting social media person would do. I started a blog. Started just a small town girl because there's so many people, I think, that were just like Lake Arrowhead who had no money but didn't know the value of social media. So then something bad happened. Our board of directors at Lake Arrowhead said, oh, fabulous, you've done such a great job. We still have no money. You have to do it again. So I thought, well, we'll just keep going on with the, event marketing. And so that was the plan, nothing changing. And in February, Social Media Examiner contacted me. How many of you know who Social Media Examiner is? Okay, well, they said, hey, you've proven the ROI of social media. Can we do a case study on you? Oh, well, that would be fine. That's great. And in May they did, and I really wasn't ready for it. It was fabulous. They gave Lake Arrowhead so much credibility, and again, it just helped with our tourism. And then all of a sudden, it was pretty funny because people were calling from all over the country, oh, can you help us? You know what you're doing? And it's like, no, I didn't know what I was doing. I'm just talking to people. It's just being social. So that was good. But right after this came out, another really kind of bad thing happened. Our village management changed, and all of a sudden, the big summer concert series that I'd kind of hung our hat on the year before was no more. They were still having it, but it was funky. It wasn't the great bands that were driving, bringing the families and all that. So in retrospect, it ended up being good because it forced me to look outside of just events, because really we had just really focused on events. And I started talking about quality of life. Some individual businesses, but we're membership driven, and that's a little tough to do. But really, what makes Lake Arrowhead special? That's what I was talking about. And so we went through the rest of the year that way, and again, we weren't as busy. We definitely were not as busy. So when fall came around, again, I was really worried, and we didn't hear from the county until January of 2011 how we had done. And here's how we did. In 2008, when we had off the hill advertising, paid print advertising, we got $133,000. We got, in 2009, the first year of social media, we got about $600 more, and that meant more people stayed overnight. Then in 2010, we dropped $2,000, and I really truly blame it on that concert series. But also, the economy was just so bad, getting worse and worse. But we were holding our own. We were marketing, not spending a dime, which is, pretty, I think that's a pretty good thing. So then in 2011, just to give you kind of an update, I got $5,000 to spend. Isn't that fabulous? And I put that with TripAdvisor so we could be the, we partnered, so we controlled most of the data on the TripAdvisor Lake Arrowhead page, not the reviews, but all the content. So that was good, and we were getting 10 to 12,000 new visitors to our website each and every month because of that. So that was good. And then I'm a department of one, and I've been doing this now, I'm starting the third year, and I asked finally if our community would come and take, they were relying on the chamber to do this, and it's like, can't you guys come and help a little bit? And so we started a social media meetup group, and I have about 30 businesses or so that have been attending, and I will write the tweets and the Facebook posts for them. And then when they have room in their social media, which they're not doing that much, so they're mostly using the the destination tweets and Facebook posts, they'll use those. And so we have a community now that's backing up what the destination is saying. So that ended up being a pretty good thing. And I can't give you numbers because the county in early 2012 hadn't told us how much bed tax we were going to get. It was going to be pretty close, probably a little less than 131,000, and I took a new job finally. So I can't tell you what the final outcome was. But the takeaway from all of this, and there's our check from 2009, the big county check that they do for $133,717, showing that social media, primarily Twitter. Now, we did have a Facebook presence, but it's Twitter that was connecting us to all these people throughout Southern California and literally the world too. But Twitter allows you to connect with people you never could have, and it will change your community, and it can help you with help your small businesses within your community. And for everybody with small budgets, well, or any budget really, social media is a big gift, and Twitter to me is just like winning the lottery. So there's my contact information, and thank you very much.
You're probably going to be the next brand ambassador for Twitter now. We've got a video too. Okay, Jake's got a question, straight up.
Yeah, I had a shout out that I would like to go into for Allie. because some people had asked me if if I was running a DMO, because the purpose of the website for DMOs for a CVB is different from that from a state, and that's different from a tourism board. And so one of the thoughts that I had is I would hire the 4 best concierges, hotel concierges in town, and I would promote them on the website and have them recommend where to send people. And in fact, they're doing that. And so they have a concierge from the Westin Hotel who's fabulous, and I met her when I was at DMAI in Seattle and talked to her about what she's doing. And you may want to, just address some of that, because that's an approach that I haven't seen anybody else use.
Are we on? And I wish I could take credit for that. She was in place before I started. She is at Seattle Maven. She was formerly a hotel concierge that luckily my predecessors were smart enough to snatch up. Right now we're using her. We have a huge local following, which helps authenticate our messaging to visitors, which we love. And we're creating our little twarmy, which she loves that term, by the way, of 4 or 5 individuals that represent different departments within our organization, so that we now have different voices. Anne at Seattle Maven is very well versed in attractions and the history of the city, but now we have someone from membership, because that's always a tricky one. I know all of you DMOs are nodding. We have someone from our front desk that deals with call-ins all the time with questions, so she's very quick to respond, and then someone from my department as well responding to these. But hotel concierges obviously know the city in and out more than any of us ever could, and the fact that she also brings that community with her so that she can reference them and bring them into the conversation, again, just really authenticates the message that you are truly an expert of your city.
Yeah, I had one more question, and you may have answered this already because I wasn't in the room the entire time, but the concept of voice, and to be able to, because I think you all stumbled on it somehow, but what is the key to finding a voice? I know it's authenticity,
Yep.
but if you could somehow package that.
Yeah, it's probably one of the most asked questions we get. How do you take advantage of this platform that makes you more human, right? That's the opportunity. Sometimes what you see happen when people aren't sure what to tweet is they get more formal. They sort of don't want to take a risk, and so they just keep it vanilla, and that's the wrong way to approach it. Where we see people have the most success is when they bring that human element forward, and there's a couple of different ways that people approach that. So showed the Vermont example where you have different people tweeting on behalf of the handle, and that's one way to do it. I think you see people hire specifically people who are strong writers who understand, how to work within 140 characters, how to be interesting and really make the most use of a tweet. But then there are people who can't afford to hire, right? But they do many things, wear many hats. And those that I've seen really progress are they literally put in front of them, okay, what should we sound like? If we were a TV character, a movie character, who would we be? What kind of vocabulary should we be pulling in? Some brands are luxury brands or luxury companies, and the language is rich. Some want to be excited and friendly and personable, and it's just sort of using real words that are humble and approachable. And then some can use humor in a different way, right? And so you see, especially some of the England brands or English brands that we work with, they can be a little bit snarkier, and sort of that British humor you see coming through. But being human, I think, is the big piece of it. And so once you've identified how you should sound based on who you are, then writing tweets in advance and looking at them and showing them to someone else and saying, okay, how could we tweak this? And eventually people get better. They start to develop a cadence. They start to develop a language that really works for them.
Cool. Has anyone got any other questions that they'd like to ask? I'm sure there's lots of burning questions out there.
Yeah, they're all ready to go.
Come on. Going once. Oh, come on, we've got 3 very intelligent ladies at the front of the stage. And do you know what? I'm glad you said about English humour. That was what it was, see?
Oh, okay.
I can't help being English. Boom. Come on, Gaithan, have you got a question? Anybody? Come on. Is there anything else that you guys would like to talk through? Or?
I have one last little anecdote. We obviously funded these influencers to come into the city and tweet about it. One thing that we didn't expect, we hoped for, but didn't expect, is that the general public would catch on and do it themselves. And we've had individuals that have come now, and I just checked between sessions, of course, the 2 days in Seattle hashtag, and there were people that were in last weekend that we didn't pay them to come, and they're using, I would have picked a shorter hashtag, actually, if I could do it again. But people came into the city and they were tweeting on their own, and we are not paying these people, and they're continuing our message out there, even without asking. And they write blog posts. They get us more impressions. They get more people here. And it's the power of free social media, which I think any DMO can really put to use.
There's a couple of things on that point I wanted to kind of, from my perspective, is that I would get really frustrated when you see people, DMOs particularly, but also airlines and other people, spending big amounts of money on Twitter and on other social media and then never replying. I see it all the time. It's I travel all over the place, and you're tweeting, and it's kind of like the first thing you do surely is just follow the name of your place. And I know somewhere like San Francisco is going to be heavily talked to, but if I'm using either their hashtag or mentioning them, I kind of, if you're saying something really cool, you kind of expect some kind of response, no?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
I've got Seth one more question, but one brand I wanted to raise that a couple of weeks ago, we've got 2 competing airlines in New Zealand, and one's like the national flag carrier around New Zealand, and the other one's Jetstar. And Jetstar's renowned for having awful customer service, really, really bad customer service. And they reply to every tweet. And I reckon that 90% of their tweets are saying your airline is crap. And every single time they come back. And about 2 weeks ago, I thought, I'm going to try this. I'm going to put big ups to Jetstar, because they're the only company I know, obviously in 140 characters, only company I know that reply to every bad comment. And they came back and put, thanks for the compliment. Sorry you don't like our airline. I thought that was pretty cool. Over to you, Seth.
Hi there, Seth Spillman from Oklahoma City. You mentioned the 30 influencers that you invited in, and there was one that had a bad experience. Would you mind sharing a little bit more about the one that had a bad experience?
She was a sourpuss. One of the issues we're working on right now is parking downtown. I'm sure a lot of cities can relate to that too. And I think she was just a negative attitude kind of person. Looking back, she didn't quite hit the formula for our influencers that we wanted. So Clout owes us one. But nothing would have been good for her. Unfortunately, parking was terrible. She didn't like her waiter. Her hotel room was smaller than other influencers that were there that weekend. So, a special weekend away, and she didn't like it, but which is fine. It authenticates the fact that we didn't really tell these people they had to do anything. We just said, if you like it, please tweet about it. Unfortunately, she heard just tweet about it. So,
going back to the voice, if there's just one thing I could add to that, as long as you know who your market is, very specifically, and what drives them, that will kind of frame your voice too. Because for Lake Arrowhead, we knew, it's families, it's easy, it's nothing too formal, and we just, pressed points like the weather. When it's burning up in LA, you come up to the other LA, Lake Arrowhead, and you're not going to be nice and cool in the mountains, or, the fun things that you could do. And how I always look at writing a tweet. I'm an English major, so I like this stuff, but it's like a game to me. How can you craft it to get the most out of it? And I think every tweet that I personally write is just flat out fun to do, because you're trying to get the, it's fun to see how much bang you get for your buck and that sort of thing. That's all I have.
Sorry. Hi, ladies. So there are quite a few Twitter chats out there on travel, and we participate in a couple of those per week. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on those.
Yeah, we see different chats happen all the time, right? You might have a luminary or someone who's an expert in something, and I think they're really effective. Know a lot of people who use them. It's just sort of how are you focusing it, right? You know, what are people going to be talking about? What kind of information are you going to give them? What's the purpose of the chat? Are you trying to get more followers? Are you trying to, you know, encourage people to talk about an event or something that you have coming up? You know, that's the big piece of it. But usually they're really positive things, and they're pretty simple to organize. It's just making sure that people know that it's going to happen, and you've got people who are participating, you're using a hashtag that's easy to find, just thinking it through. But yeah, typically they're great.
Cool, we've got one more question.
This question's for Allie. I was just kind of curious on the Seattle Maven account. I know that it was started by, I just gone blank on her name. What is Seattle Maven, the concierge you were mentioning?
At Seattle Maven?
Yeah.
What was the question?
So is it just one person behind that account, or is there multiple?
It was originally her personal account.
Right.
She jumped on Twitter way before I think Seattle as a destination was ready to. So she took it on herself and owned it, and that's why we're actually switching over, which is a brave, scary move, to @Visit Seattle and creating this little swarmy of people. She has 1 million kids and adorable dogs, and found that it was hard to divide a personal account and a professional account. So that's why we're going to evolve that a little bit more towards a Visit Seattle and have more voices. But it started out as her personal.
Cool, thank you very much. And I think that's just about time. We've got a few points, but first of all, I think we need to give a big round of applause.